Hey, it's Justin. I'm here with Marshall. Welcome back, everyone, for another Reinforce recap video. Had a great time at Reinforce 2025 this year. Talked to a lot of customers and partners. Today, we're going to take you through some of the exciting launches that were launched last week. First, the main themes of Reinforce this year were around simplifying security as you scale in AWS, also strengthening the security of your workloads and the data in AWS, heavy emphasis on partners and exciting solutions that our partners are offering, as well as how to secure GenAI and AI security for all your AWS workloads. So the first thing I'm going to go into is a little bit about strengthening your security through modernization. Migration to the cloud brings substantial security benefits, but the ultimate goal should be modernizing. Modernizing helps you move your solutions further up the stack into more managed services like Lambda, S3, KMS, and then you benefit from the increased security that comes along at the same time while reducing your reliance on manual configurations, and as many of us know, it's automation that brings a lot of scale and security to your AWS infrastructure. So always be on the lookout for improving and modernizing those workloads that you've migrated to AWS. I want to take a minute to talk about the generative AI scoping matrix. Marshall, there's a lot of resources available to customers about securing generative AI workloads. When we started getting questions about how we would recommend customers secure those, we created a cross-functional team across our security community of experts to get together and unpack what we were experiencing ourselves, as well as what we were hearing from our customers. And the result was the Generative AI Scoping Matrix. This is available to you through a series of blogs, but also some white paper resources. And it simplifies where you need to focus based on the type of AI workloads that you're dealing with. So if you are using a off-the-shelf packaged AI versus something that you're fine-tuning yourself, there's different controls that you'd want to put in place. And the scoping matrix helps bring all that to a simpler conversation where you can focus you and your security teams. It also creates a common language between security practitioners and developers to accelerate securing these workloads. For partners, we launched an enhancement to the MSSP specialization. For the first time, you can easily identify MSSP partners that use security tools, whether they're AWS or external tools, and we have a smaller set of specializations so you can see maybe partners that focus specifically on application security versus workload security. We've always had a high bar for these specializations, but now we're further validating these capabilities by looking at customer references and real-world implementations to ensure that partners can successfully navigate these ever-changing landscape of security solutions.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful. I know a number of customers using partners out there. Making sure they can find the right partner for them to help them is super important. I can jump into the next big theme that we talked about is something at AWS that we call Blackfoot, which is essentially an internal network mapping device. So Blackfoot translates outside IPs to internal IPs, and this happens for traffic all day, every day at AWS. Blackfoot handles roughly 13 trillion flows per hour, so you can kind of see the enormous scale that this happens at. Something that we've used this scale for is to create an internal service that we call MadPot. MadPot is a collection of EC2 instances with high interaction honeypots. So these honeypots advertise different services while pretending to be vulnerable versions of those services, and the goal is to attract bad actors. And at any given time, we have tens of thousands of MadPots running in our global network, and they're consistently shifting through our IP space. So while MadPot gives you the intel to identify the bad actors, Blackfoot gives you the data plane to stop those activities. Using Blackfoot and MadPot together, we've implemented custom packet processing at a massive scale. So we can essentially detect bad actors scanning potential vulnerabilities and places in our IP space to drop these interactions so that any packet they send never even gets seen in a VPC. So as an end customer, that bad traffic never makes it to that instance potentially.
And that's a protection you would get just for being an AWS customer, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And then overall, how has it reduced our vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so we do have some numbers around that. It's reduced vulnerabilities by over 75%. And prevented 2.4 trillion malicious scan requests over the last 6 months alone. So quite a massive scale that we're operating at, and a big impact that we can have with this different technology.
And we're going to hear more about MadPot and some other releases as well, but one of the things is they measure the list of mitigated IP addresses every 3 minutes. And on average, 12.5% of those mitigated IPs have changed. So if you're dealing with a large amount of threat intel, it's measured in effectiveness in not just days, but minutes.
Cool, now we're gonna shift from some of the bigger arching themes into some of our more domain-specific launches that came out at Reinforce. So the first one is related to IAM Access Analyzer, and it is related to internal access analysis. So it addresses essentially one of the most critical security challenges organizations face today, and from the feedback that we hear from customers. So maintaining this clear visibility of who can access sensitive resources within an AWS organization. With this new functionality, at its core, you're able to evaluate across identity, resource, service control policies, resource control policies, to truly understand what access is being given to a specific underlying resource.
So if I had like an S3 bucket in my account that I really wanted to make sure that, who has access to that, then now IAM Access Analyzer.
Yeah, this is going to make it way easier to answer that question than customers were able to do in the past.
Nice.
The next launch is associated with Amazon Verified Permissions, and this is a framework support for Express applications, which is an open source integration designed for fast and centralized access control. So this is adding dependency for AVP packaging, generating CEDR schema from APIs, as well as a number of other enhancements such as upload schema from CLI to console and some other things that customers would want to do when using AVP with these Express applications. And then another association here is Amazon Verified Permissions has reduced its pricing from $150 to $5 per million authorization requests. So it's a 30x cost savings.
Amazing.
And then finally, the last launch in the identity and access management space is related to multi-factor authentication requirements for member accounts in AWS organizations. So for folks who are keeping track, we have made this a requirement for management accounts of root access associated with management accounts.
Yeah.
And now this is going to be a requirement for root access of member accounts in those organizations as well too. So this definitely helps with making sure that we are setting up accounts and thinking of security as a default when it comes to configuring a new AWS account.
Yeah, MFA is a critical protection for those root account logins.
All right, so the next domain that we're going to jump into is the detection and response domain, which is near and dear to my heart. The first launch that we have in this space is with AWS Security Hub. Folks might know AWS Security Hub now as a cloud security posture management solution, so looking at the configurations of resources in your AWS account. Now Security Hub is adding functionality for bringing a lot of different signals together to come out with new exposure-based findings. So we're essentially bringing traits in from things like Inspector network reachability, Security Hub cloud security posture management controls, Inspector vulnerabilities to help customers understand their most critical risk in their environment. So for example, an instance is open to the internet. It also has a remote code execution vulnerability associated with it. A number of different things to say this is what you should prioritize so that it helps customers shift through the noise that could be created from a number of different security solutions.
And when I saw one of these findings, it showed specifically which data was included so that I could easily know, okay, this also has sensitive data from Macy or this vulnerability, like all right there in that finding.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to bring all of that together and just make this a much more simple experience for customers going forward.
Nice.
All right, and then the next launch in the detection and response domain is with Amazon Guard Duty. So if you were paying attention after reInvent last year, we came out with a new functionality called Amazon Guard Duty Extended Threat Detection, where we introduced 2 new finding types for credential compromise and data compromise. This is bringing a number of different findings and signals together to understand an overall security issue. So we know with security issues in any environment and in cloud environments, there's probably a number of different things that happen. There's enumeration, there's maybe a credential compromise, there's impact type of activities. Understanding all these things together can help speed up remediation and understanding what exactly happened and where you need to prioritize your time. So what we launched was EKS, Extended Threat Detection, a finding type. So we can see container compromises related to EKS workloads, what's happening on the host, what's happening at the AWS control plane potentially, or any number of different data sources associated with those EKS workloads.
Nice.
Yeah. And then finally is a release from our Amazon or AWS customer incident response team. So this is a team that helps customers on the customer side of the shared responsibility model. So they are a hands-on team that can, with a lot of expertise in helping with these security issues, and they gather a lot of information that we feed back into our services and our understanding of how we use services. What they've released is a threat technique catalog. This is publicly available. It's essentially an extension to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So folks that are familiar with MITRE ATT&CK, it shows tactics, techniques, and procedures associated with cloud workloads, for example. They've extended this to be very specific to AWS resources and AWS services, so that when customers are creating detection capabilities or mitigation configurations that they need, or just need to identify tactics of a potential security issue, they can leverage this resource to help them understand things that are very specific to an AWS environment.
Yeah, that's super cool. I was looking at it last week, and not only does it map to the framework, it also shows like mitigations for AWS specific strategies. So it's got that detail in there to say, well, not only can I see what this is, but here's what I should go do to resolve that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Marshall. Now let's talk about some of the launches in the infrastructure protection and security domain. So first up is Network Firewall's dashboard providing improved observability. So with this, you can see enhanced network traffic monitoring capabilities. It's built into the AWS Network Firewall console and has some top key insights like top traffic flows, TLS, SNI, server name indication, HTTP host headers, long-lived TCP flows. So then customers who are writing their own rules can use these insights to incorporate that into rules within Network Firewall.
No, this is definitely an example of our service teams listening to our customers and what they want. This is something that people have been able to build using CloudWatch previously,
right,
but it was something they had to build. So kudos to the Network Firewall team for pushing this out for our customers so it's there natively.
So if you use Network Firewall today, navigate over the console and look at some of these new dashboards. Next is a native integration with Transit Gateway. So this overall simplifies the experience. I mentioned some of the themes were simplicity. So this native Transit Gateway integration allows direct attachment of Network Firewall without an inspection VPC. So if you have explored Network Firewall, you've probably looked at some of the integration patterns that we've blogged about or have in our documentation for setting up Network Firewall. Well, now I can attach directly to Transit Gateway without having to set up that inspection VPC. So this native integration brings centralized security control across your global AWS infrastructure, and it also eliminates that complex VPC configurations streamlining the ability to get this set up quickly. Next up, AWS Network Firewall launched Active Threat Defense. So automated threat detection that automatically blocks traffic using threat intelligence from AWS against those active threats that are targeting your AWS workloads. So what this means is you add a managed rule group to your network firewall that's filtering both inbound and outbound traffic, looking at TCP, TLS, HTTP, and utilizes specific verified threat indicators. And it really streamlines your operations because in the past, you might have read a blog about connecting guard duty alerts to network firewall. Well, now that all happens as part of a managed rule. And you get rapid updates. So as the threat intel updates, those happen as part of this rule set so that if they're aged out, and we talked earlier about what we see with MadPot, that automatically happens within this rule.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just to your point about MadPot, this is another example of that team using our scale and threat intelligence, providing that back to customers so that we can worry about and carry the burden of the threat intel grooming and updating rules, and customers get to just take advantage of that. So,
next up, AWS Shield, which today protects customers' edge from DDoS attacks, has expanded and launched the preview of Network Security Director, which gives you visibility before there's a DDoS attack into network resources and their configurations all in one dashboard. So you can now prioritize critical configuration issues, look at the severity level, look at AWS best practices, and therefore quickly to respond and address vulnerabilities that you might have or configurations that you weren't aware of in your network resources. And we also provide a simple natural language interface with Amazon Q Developer so that you can have a conversation and learn more in an interactive way about these resources. The next release is AWS WAF Intelligent Application Protection. This is a new implementation and setup experience that reduces the time by up to 80%. So when you're creating WAF protections and using rules and deciding on which rules to use, it provides a simple dashboard with all the metrics and configuration and monitoring created in one place to make those recommendations. As you go through this guided experience, this simplified approach can have you have your WAF protecting your web resources within minutes instead of however long it potentially took you to set that up previously.
Yeah, one thing that I've heard from customers quite often, right, is like, what is the best practices here for setting these WAF policies up, right? This is going to help customers get to that point a lot faster, get some of those visualizations that they need to tune rules and everything going forward. Really, it's going to get you to a more secure place by default without the amount of work that it might have taken previously. So.
And this new experience isn't just about the setup, it's also got new dashboards and visualizations for the ongoing management and observability related to your web protections.
Absolutely.
Also, AWS WAF launched the L7 AntiDOS AMR. AMR is an Amazon managed rule, so you go into your WAF configuration and you can add this rule alongside your other rules as well. It provides faster detection and mitigation, so a DDoS response is reduced from minutes to single-digit seconds. It also has technology for improved accuracy. It minimizes false negatives without increasing your false positives, and gives you granular control so that you can tune DDoS mitigation actions based on the sensitivity of your applications, because it's in with the rest of the rules as well. And there's an overall simplified setup that we just talked about that makes this easier to configure and begin protecting your applications against DDoS.
I know you get to take advantage of some of the different things like the labels that this emits and some of the different count functionality, and gives customers definitely a little more granular control. So something that I know folks are excited about.
Next up is the data protection security domain. The first one is AWS Certificate Manager now introduces exportable public SSL and TLS certificates that you can use anywhere. So this simplifies the process of provisioning and management. ACM does that today. And those certificates that you have today work the same way that they do, but for new certs, you have an option to make them publicly exportable. And then you can use these certificates and their private keys from ACM to terminate TLS traffic on other workloads, maybe outside of AWS or in a hybrid environment where you need to manage these certificates. Next, AWS Backup launched MultiParty approval support for those logically air-gapped vaults. So if you want distributed decision-making, required multiple authorization or multiple authorized individuals to be able to approve critical backup operations, well, now you can do this through AWS native approval process built in through an integration with Identity Center and IAM, and you can manage those requests and the overall recovery through multi-party approvals.
Great, and then moving on to application security, we have one launch in this space related to Amazon Inspector Code Security,
Nice.
Which provides security across your stack. So think of static application security testing, software composition analysis, scanning of infrastructure as code like CDK, which is the Cloud Development Kit, Terraform, CloudFormation. Now we're able to scan these different repositories in GitLab and GitHub to look for vulnerabilities as they sit in those repos. So if you're paying attention to vulnerability scanning across the software development lifecycle, you have things like QDeveloper that sit in the IDE, and you can look for security vulnerabilities there and help get those remediated in that IDE. We can use Inspector for scanning as that code sits in a repo, as well as using Inspector for things like CI/CD integrations, scanning software and operating systems as they sit in an AWS environment, and really able to look for vulnerabilities across that software development lifecycle.
So whether you're like a developer or a security director, you have access to tools that would give you visibility into those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So the difference between that central security team and then down to the developer level. Yep.
Nice.
And then our last section is governance, risk, and compliance. The first one here that we have is AWS Control Tower being able to deploy service-linked config rules directly into managed accounts. So this is those direct deployments in those managed accounts, which is essentially replacing previous AWS CloudFormation stack set methods that were used to deploy these config rules into those accounts.
Got it.
Making it, once again, more simple, easy to use some of these security services.
Nice.
And then finally, AWS Control Tower now supports 7 new compliance frameworks. So CIS version 8.0, FedRAMP R4, NIST CSF version 1.1, and a number of others. So you can essentially cover your AWS environments and map these back to different compliance frameworks to understand configurations and compliance alignment in your AWS environments using Control Tower. Finally, we launched a new learning experience called the Security Champion Learning Path. So this learning plan is part of an official AWS learning online center called Skill Builder. The plan is structured in essentially 16 different courses with hands-on labs. This is to help builders become security champions at your organization. So this is something that you should take advantage of, get your builders involved. It doesn't just have to be security professionals. This is geared toward those builders, so they're thinking of security as they're building AWS resources and applications in AWS. Over the time. So something we do at AWS that we wanted to expose to the public and doing this through this online learning.
Thanks everyone for watching our video today. We'll see you at reInvent 2025 in Las Vegas later this year.
Hit that like and subscribe button if you like this content. Thanks.